Good morning, Dante. Welcome to Diaspora Food Stories. How are you?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Good, good. Joining us from San Francisco, California. Is that your native town?
It is the city by the bay, as they say.
City by the Bay. Well, I'm excited because we're talking about all things gumbo, which is one of my favorite dishes. And you got so many, I mean, not you, but just the world has so many takes on it, origins and things. But your goal is to make that the official dish of America. So we're going to get into that. But again, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So, how I always like to go into it is let's start off by learning a little bit more about your background so that we can see where gumbo came into play. So, again, you just mentioned from San Francisco. Tell me a little bit about growing up in San Francisco.
Yeah, I grew up in San Francisco, born and raised,
Mhm.
and I grew up in the Bayview area, District 10, and I fell in love with food pretty early on. A lot of that comes from my grandmother and mom,
Mhm.
and my father. My father and my whole family come from a family of really amazing cooks and chefs. um, but none of them have been professionals.
Okay.
And so I would say my grandmother really she instilled this attitude of acts of service and the honor to be able to serve people. And I took that idea and ran with it. She taught me really the kind of the fundamentals of cooking and really
Mhm.
invoked the opportunity to explore those things as something that could be a career for me.
Now, what was grandma cooking? What were some of your favorite dishes that you were raised on?
Yeah. So my grandmother's from Mississippi. So
Okay.
she would always tell stories of the classic Sunday dinner. And she grew up on a farm. And
Okay.
so early on, I was able to kind of understand, what food really meant to her. It kind of reminds me of when I remember the stories of my grandmother, it reminds me of reading some of Edna Lewis's books.
Okay.
And for folks who don't know, Edna Lewis is a renowned chef that grew up in Virginia, Freetown, Virginia, and was one of the most incredible, incredible chefs
Yes.
to grace this world. And so she would tell these through her cooking. She would tell these really rich stories about the soil and the farming and community, and they were all really through the lens of food. And while grandmother would tell these stories, she would kind of do the same thing. And so
Mm.
some of the dishes that my grandmother would make, well, obviously is gumbo was one of those
Mhm.
things. Was one of those things. That was a Christmas dish or really a special occasion dish for us.
Mhm.
But my grandmother was a fantastic baker. She cooked all of her cakes and breads from scratch, and so I don't ever remember a box of Duncan Hines at my grandmother's house. Her pound cakes and just layered cakes, and she was phenomenal.
Wow. Now, seeing that, were those the main culinary influences? Were there any outside culinary influences as food again was sort of coming into center into your life?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I love when I was a kid, I loved cartoons,
Okay.
but what I loved even more was watching Channel 9,
Okay.
KQED. So you had shows like Great Chefs, Great Cities, and Yang Can Cook
Mhm.
and Sam Choi. I actually had a chance to meet Sam, just one of the nicest people ever. Right?
Wow.
Just I was like, dude, I literally grew up watching you. It was a great experience. But yeah, watching Channel 9. This is before the Food Channel existed,
Right.
and so we didn't have no cable. So Great Chefs, Great City, all those really great shows, and then there were cookbooks. There were
Hmm.
cookbooks that my grandmother had that you know me and my sister would kind of look through and look at the pictures and kind of just almost fantasize. I wonder how that tastes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So, for a lot of people, food is very important growing up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the career path that they're going to pursue. Was that a career path that you pursued early on?
Yeah, it was. So, I knew what I was good at and what I wasn't good at.
Hmm.
I think I'm one of the few people that are really blessed to identify what their passion is very young
Okay.
and be able to develop that. And so, the average person changes careers 3 times in their life. And on top of that, there are a group of humans who never really find a passion for anything.
Right.
They never get a chance to really do their life's work.
Hmm.
And so I always tell people, the culinary, this is the thing that a lot of people don't know about me. The culinary is my passion, but it's the kind of the gateway for me to entrepreneurship.
Okay. Okay.
So at my core, it's entrepreneurship and business, but the chef that's the kind of the lane that got me to there to
Got you.
that point. Yeah.
So, what was the vision or what was the goal then as you were pursuing, a career in culinary, whereas that would take you to entrepreneurship, et cetera? What did you have in mind?
Yeah, I would say, as I was coming up, probably middle school, high school, the goal was to work at a fancy restaurant.
Okay.
You know, like I could make great food, and then as I got into college, and I started doing, in high school I sold candy. In middle school I had a car. I had a candy house every summer, a car wash. It was always something that had to do with generating some type of money.
Gotcha. So that, and going back to what you said, entrepreneurship, right?
Absolutely. So, at an early age, I knew that one day I was going to have to be able to make some money legally.
Hmm.
My mom wouldn't allow me to do anything illegal. She ain't playing that. she,
We
she
gotta love mom for it.
she ain't playing that. So, for me, it was always, how can I do something to serve people? And
Okay.
so, you know, just starting off with those ideas in mind, and then I just kind of fell in love with the business part. Probably when I got to college and
Okay.
started culinary arts.
Gotcha. So take us on your career journey then. So graduate from culinary school. What's next for you? How
Yeah.
did we start?
From there, I go. I've been working previously to culinary school, so I worked at a retirement home, serving the elderly population, and that was a great experience. For anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to work with folks that are in their golden years,
Hmm.
you are able to truly see what the full cycle of life looks like,
Hmm.
and you're able to really kind of find yourself in a moment and say, this is incredible, because one day I may be here, and to be able to take care of those folks is a huge thing, because every human has contributed something different to the world,
Right.
right? And so that was a great experience. We do culinary school. um I go to France for 3 months
Hmm.
to eat and work and drink, and
Learn a little Francais.
a little bit. I can't remember anything now, but the merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Um, and that was I will say, going to France was a life changing um situation,
Hmm.
because it gave me a different perspective on the world and on hospitality. It gave me. I grew up in the Bayview, which is a pretty. For me, it's home. For people outside of there, they think it's a rough neighborhood. It was tough growing up there.
Right.
It wasn't Southside Chicago, but or Baltimore, but it was a dangerous place.
Hmm.
And going outside of there, going to Paris, going to Epernay, going to Vienne and Avignon, Lyon, which is Lyon's incredible.
Hmm.
We talk about food. The food in Lyon is it's top notch,
Nice.
and being able to just to see a different culture of people in France and sorry, in Paris, being able to see the mesh of communities and different cultures in Paris is really interesting, right?
Right.
Groups of folks from Morocco and Africans and
Mm-hmm.
all of these different people melding together, but also segregated at the same time. It's
Right.
really interesting.
Right. Right.
It's really interesting. Seeing people that look like you but don't sound like you. So that was my first taste of the diaspora in a way that I'm like, we look like each other, but I don't know you, but we almost feel like kin.
And how old were you?
I was 21, 22.
Okay, so that's a nice age.
Yeah. No, I was 20 actually.
Okay.
I don't know how I got on that trip, but
You got on it.
I
Hey,
got
it was
there.
meant to be. It was
Right.
meant to be.
So yeah, so we do France, and then I do my internship at Delfina restaurant in San Francisco, world renowned um, restaurant, and then I go and work a couple other places, but I end up coming back to Delfina to help open their pizzeria. One of like I think there are like five now,
Okay.
and I worked there for about a year, and then I go back into the restaurant. So I've been involved in that business and family for a while, and then I uh, end up going to Google to work a bit,
Okay. Okay.
and that was a different experience from traditional fine dining. It was experience. It was a unique experience where I was able to cook my own food, um, but with different groups of people.
Okay.
So a chef a cook in fine dining, or a chef in fine dining, we interact with our guest, but the interactions are uniquely different than working with someone, interacting with someone that kind of in the tech world. And a lot of chefs will echo this when you're working in these kind of tech cafeterias. The entitlement and the mindset is totally different than someone that is paying for this unique dining experience.
That I can imagine. I can imagine. Because everything was free, right? The Google employees, all they had to do is come down for the most part. There's different stations I'm hearing and
Hmm.
different cuisines. So it was like a whole culinary experience for employees.
It was the whole thing, yeah. So there was multiple. So you had the main Google campus in Mountain View. This is where I worked,
Hmm.
and at the time when I was there, it was 17 cafes on campus.
Wow.
When I left, there were 23.
Wow.
So, the main, which was called the hub, the main building had 8 different cafes. So you had cafes that did breakfast, lunch, and dinner, around the clock service, almost. Charlie's Cafe had, this cafe had essentially 15 different stations, rotating menu
Wow.
every day.
Wow.
It's just one cafe.
And so how many was on your team or that you were working with?
Yeah, so I worked in a different building. I had a team of 4.
Okay.
I was the lead there, and then it was an interesting time in Google where the stock prices were really high, and then overnight they went down, and then here comes the axe, right? Like I went
Really?
from a team of 4 to 2 or 1. It was me and another team member, and that was a blessing in disguise because the fat was trimmed, and the opportunity for me to grow uh, came.
Okay.
So we went from a situation where our cafe budget was $4.2 million, and my food budget was $900,000 a year,
Wow.
to chef. No longer can we order pre-cut fish. We're going to bring in whole Massachusetts bass and black cod and all these wonderful fish, but we're going to bring them in whole. We need to butcher them. So that gave me an opportunity to get my butchery skills
Mm.
down it gave me an opportunity to, the mentee that I had, to be able to bring him along
Mhm.
and develop his skill set. And so we learned and grew together. We went from a situation when we had a prep team that did all of our mise en place and we executed,
Mhm.
to me and another team member. I had to bring this guy from scratch, which was a great learning experience for me, to how to uplift and bring someone along, teach them core fundamentals of culinary, and still get the job done. So it was a really good experience in that light. So some great opportunities, but the biggest learning lesson there was, as a chef and as a person, learning what my boundaries were. And
Got you.
so,
So let's talk a little bit about your style, because of course in culinary school we know that that is changing as we try to bring more diversity to culinary programs, right? So it's not just about French cuisine anymore. You're infusing what the world looks like. But what is your style? What was your style? Has it evolved over the years? So because I'm sure you're still, 20s, 30s working at Google, I'm guessing.
yeah,
So what is your style? Have you established the type of cuisine that you want to prepare?
yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of people people always say, what's your specialty?
Hmm.
I don't have a specialty. I'm a
Okay.
chef. I'm a chef. And so I've always gravitated towards the Northern Italian style cuisine,
Okay.
as a focal point for myself. But what I've learned was that's something that I like to eat. I like to cook is, California style or in Southern style cuisine.
Okay.
That's what my core is, but it really is backed in traditional French cuisine.
Hmm.
And we're
Hmm.
talking about the elements of, like, the mother sauces and just core technique is,
Right.
yeah, it's
Right.
French, right?
Hmm.
That's what we learn in culinary school. But what I'm seeing today, and I can appreciate today, is that the different foods are starting to be appreciated.
Right.
Different cuisines are starting to be
Right.
appreciated. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. So you're at Google. What's next after Google? What's next in your journey?
Yeah, I go and open up I go in a part of an opening team of a restaurant, um in Palo Alto, from a tech founder. And that was a cool experience, being a part of an opening team. That gave me a lot of experience of opening up a place.
Okay.
That was great. And then I moved on from that location, and I was like, hey, let's do something different. And I went to go work at this place called Contigo, and that was Catalan style food, which is
Okay.
Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
a region in Spain, and that was uniquely different than anything I've ever done.
Okay.
And so at the time, there was probably three or four good Spanish restaurants, in San Francisco, and this place was very different, really rooted in California cuisine, with the idea of using locally sourced ingredients. Um, but I learned a lot of technique and different preparations there. And then from Contigo, I decided to open up my own company.
Now, was that always in the back of your head as you were going along this journey, though? Was that always, again, going back to entrepreneurship? So, as you're getting all of this experience, right, in restaurants at Google, did you always have it in your head that you wanted to open your own spot?
Absolutely, that was the only thing that was on my mind.
Hmm.
Like, how do I open? How do I, like, what is the next? I'm always thinking about what's next for me,
Hmm.
and so I'm like, well, what's the business play here for me? Like, what do I? What can I? What is the business piece? And so I'm always like, cool. Well, we did this. We just did this recipe. Well, let me cost it out. I
Okay.
actually, I kind of geek out on costing out recipes. I'm like one of those rare people where I just kind of nerd out on the math.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a nerd, a math nerd at heart. But I'm just so curious about, sometimes we'll make a dish in a restaurant that is absolutely not profitable.
Right.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, why in the hell are we doing this?
But it's the one that everybody loves,
It's the
right?
one
It's
that
like your
everyone
your
loves.
favorite
Yeah.
product that you like, oh my God, I thought that was flying off the shelf, but you got to do the business behind it.
Right. And so I fell in love with the math part. And I'm like, man, how can I like, all right, what's next? So I started doing farmers markets. I had a company called Good Foods Catering. And at that time, the street food scene in San Francisco was really starting to pick up.
Okay.
And we're talking about people on the street selling food, right? It was almost
It's
like the Wild Wild
pre-food
West.
truck day,
Pre
pre-food
food
trucks.
truck day, right before the
Okay.
food truck pop.
Okay.
And I can remember, getting off of Contigo at Friday night at like 10:30, 11 o'clock. Like calling my mom, like, Mom, throw the pulled pork in the oven for me. I'm about to come pick it up. And there's been nights where like me and my mom would be out. Like I had a Prius, out in the Prius with a cooler of pulled pork and selling sandwiches out of the back of my car.
Wow.
And like back when I think about it, I was like, man, I don't know if I would have trusted me, but it was an experience that was unique because what I have to do now today at the farmers market is I have to tell folks about my product. I can't be afraid to promote myself.
Absolutely.
And it gave me the opportunity again to serve people. I found a demand. The demand were, people at 11 o'clock that are at the bars, they want a little something
Mm-hmm.
to eat.
Mm-hmm.
What better than a little pulled pork sandwich to get you going, right?
Okay, I know that's right. So gumbo, we know grandma was making gumbo when you were growing up, but when did it start to resurface into your life again as an adult?
Yeah, I would probably say I had this I can remember it was this Christmas we had me and my business partner had landed a concessions contract at the Haas Pavilion
Okay.
in Berkeley, California, at the University of California, and we had just landed this contract to do a barbecue concession at the men's basketball game, and we're there, and this is a great opportunity for us, right? This is our first kind of swing at something really big, and we're closing out the season. We made a little bit of money. We're still trying to kind of figure out how to make this thing work, and we got invited to do Cal football, and we're doing it. He's like, "Look, we have an opportunity to do two more concession stands. I need some ideas." So I'm like, "Man, let's do some gumbo."
Mm.
And he's like, "Man, ain't nobody gonna buy no gumbo at no football game." I was like, "I bet you they will, and I bet you they'll buy some jambalaya too."
Ooh.
So we do this big run of gumbo. It's probably about 30 gallons, and we taste it. And he's like, "This is good, but man, you ain't put your foot in this one."
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I'm like, "My foot in it? Like what? What are you like? What are you talking about, man? This is good for the masses." He like he's like taller than me. He's like 6'1". I'm
Mm-hmm.
like 5'9".
Mm-hmm.
So I tell the ladies I'm 5'9". He like he comes behind me. He puts his hand on my back. He says, "Look, excuse my language here.
Mhm.
You're a motherfucking world renowned chef. Make it amazing."
Okay.
And I look at him. He's like, "No, make it amazing. Why are you producing something that's just okay?"
Oh.
And so challenge accepted. I make him his own special pot. He tastes it, looks at me, drops the spoon, walks away.
Okay. Drop the mic, huh? Drop the spoon.
Yeah. He's like, "I don't understand. Why aren't we just doing this?" He's like, "This is what I'm talking about. You're the most talented chef I know. You're the most talented person I know. Let's make this." But it took the pandemic in 10 years for Gumbo Social to kind of come out.
Okay.
So I would always make it. I would do it during Christmas and holidays, invite people over. But I wouldn't say it was a hobby. It was just a kind of a passion project, right?
Right.
And so yeah, that was out. I'll stop here. I won't go into how Gumbo Social started. I'll let you do that. But
Okay, sounds good.
yeah.
So what did you put in it, or what do you think you did differently um the second time around? that he dropped that spoon?
Yeah. So what I did differently is I I started to focus more on the spice patterns.
Okay.
I started to focus more on the intention to the roux. So this one was a lighter roux.
Mm-hmm.
This one we went dark. We just really started to just focus on each component of the gumbo to make each component better.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I found the right sausage that we wanted to use. I found the how I'm like, no, I don't want who's slicing them. I want those peppers diced and the onions diced, and
Very
we really
intentional.
started to get really focused on what I wanted to see come out of the dish.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when he had that, he was like, okay, now we're talking.
Now, did you guys serve that at Haas
We
at the
didn't.
session? Oh,
We
okay.
didn't. And so my theory was I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket.
Okay.
We need to serve this product because we made it. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, we need to serve this, but how can I elevate what we've already created?
Okay.
So I added some more product in there and made it taste better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the challenge on that one. But I was like, I'm gonna keep this other I'm gonna keep this
You want to
other
keep that other
we
recipe?
gonna keep that in my back pocket. We ain't
One.
gonna put that one out there.